Republicans have introduced their counteroffer to President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus proposal, even as some Republicans actually say they should go a little bigger. So that's interesting. So let me give you some details here. This is Joe Biden's plan, for one. It calls for direct payments of $1,400 to many Americans. So now, I've told you before, this is kind of a bait and switch. Don't get me wrong. I think $1,400 is something. It's really all you can say about it. It's something, and it will help many people. But I think the Georgia campaign, and by the way, there's a story where on a call, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff were not happy about this because on the campaign trail, they said, vote for us. You get us in the Senate, we are going to give you $2,000 checks. All right, we're going to give you $2,000 checks. And then Biden's like, $1,400 plus the $600 Trump gave you. That's us giving you $2,000, except that it's not us giving you $2,000. It's us giving you $1,400. And so a little bit of a bait and switch, okay? Again, that narrative is kind of ridiculous. $1,400 is added to the $600, is $2,000 technically, but it's not Biden giving you. It's Trump that gave you the $600 when actually he was himself pushing for $2,000. And so that tricky math does not really, it's tricky math. Okay, it's ridiculous. But anyway, Democrats, right? But there are other good things in the plan, though. Okay. Increasing the federal per week unemployment benefit to $400. It used to be $600. It not in this plan, but it should be back up to $600. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't, be up to $600. But at least they've extended it to September. That still will help a lot of people. The big one actually is increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's a significant win. Look, I know. The minimum wage should be like $22, $23. I totally agree with that. If it kept up with inflation, it'd be more. But here's the thing, right? I'll take the win for minimum wage workers. It will help millions of people, and there's no reason that we can't raise it again in a few years. Again, this is a doubling. This is a doubling of the minimum wage. Good. It's good stuff. Could we do better? Obviously. But it's good. I'll take the win, take the W. All right. Not only that, but it extends the eviction and foreclosure moratoriums until the end of September. Gives $350 billion in state and local government aid. That's good. $170 billion for K through 12 schools and institutions of higher education. $50 billion towards COVID-19 testing. That's good. $20 billion towards a national vaccine program in partnership with states, localities, and tribes. Makes the tax credit fully refundable for the year and increased the credit to about $3,000 a child or $3,600 for a child under age 6. That's also significant. All those things, they're good things. They're necessary things. I think they're aiming a bit low. I think, and it's not just me, but economists have said we actually need something that's far bigger, a stimulating package, a stimulus package, because this ain't that stimulating. It's far under what we actually need to get the economy rolling again. We should have, for example, $2,000 a month checks retroactive to the beginning of the pandemic. This is something that I've been arguing for the entire time, even under the Trump administration. We should maybe even take a look at what our Canadian neighbors are doing up north. They have something called the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, CERB. And basically it gives $2,000 a month of financial support to people who are employed and self-employed Canadians who are directly affected by COVID-19. That's a better program than what we have here. In fact, a lot of governments have actually done far more for people suffering the pandemic than the United States have. So even though I said, hey, we'll take the W, understand that comparative to the rest of the world, that actually has far limited resources compared to compared to the United States, are far more generous. And so understand that. But that's Biden's plan. All right. So now Republicans have put their own plan out. Okay. So now a new proposal from a group of 10 GOP lawmakers calls for a much skimpier version of this bill. It calls for $1,000 checks per person for individuals earning up to $40,000 a year, who would be eligible for the full payments. Those with incomes at the threshold and above would see payments gradually phase out, and eligibility would be capped at $50,000 in annual pay. So it's much, much more targeted, which means heavily means tested. So there you go. For married couples who file jointly, the payments would begin phasing out at $80,000 in income and be capped at $100,000. Children and adults who qualify as dependents would only be eligible for $500 as opposed to the $3,000 credit under the Biden plan. Convicted inmates would not be eligible. Prisoners right now are eligible to receive the $600 checks. The checks in total would be estimated $220 billion for the Republican plan. Meanwhile, the total package, including funding for vaccines, childcare, enhanced unemployment, and nutrition benefits, would cost about $618 billion. So that is really, really skinny. It's another very, very skinny bill. It's skinnier than what the Republicans were offering previously. It's more like anorexic. It needs help. It's on life support. It's not doing very well. And so that has at least one Republican saying, really? That's it? In fact, this is interesting. West Virginia is an interesting state. Okay, because here you have West Virginia Governor Jim Justice railing against a Republican plan and saying that we need to go big. Take a look.
Really and truly, Poppy, what we need to do is we need to understand that trying to be, per se, fiscally responsible at this point in time with what we've got going on in this country, if we actually throw away some money right now, so what? We have really got to move and get people taken care of.
All right, so Governor Jim Justice, everybody. So let me take issue, umbrage, because that's what I do. I pick things apart. The framing here is ridiculous. When he said waste, I don't care if we waste the money. Okay, but it's not a waste. Helping people, giving money to struggling Americans, never a waste. Okay, totally awful, terrible wording. Okay, now if you're talking about waste, well, then you're probably thinking about wealthy corporations and billionaires. That's a lot of waste. Now, that said, when it comes to relief, you guys know that I believe in a universal approach, okay? I believe that we should give $2,000 stimulus checks to everybody. I don't care if you're rich. I don't care if you made $1 million, right? Give you a stimulus check. I don't give a crap. There's a couple of reasons for that. For one, it gets it out fast. People need relief right now. Rents do. Okay, rent is literally due today. And as far as I know, according to the studies, there's about $70 billion. Americans are about $70 billion in the hole when it comes to rent. So they need help, they need relief, and they need relief now. If you just issue the checks without this means testing and super targeting and pinpoint, accuracy, and like you're sending a guided missile, which that's totally American, by the way. Could you imagine them stuffing a missile full of $1,400 and just firing it at a poor neighborhood? That is America right there. America. Here's your targeted aid, poor people. You know they would do it if they could. But that's what they do. Okay, that's what they do with the super targeting and stuff. No, blanket it. Just make it rain all over everybody. And what you do, but you might think, hey, look, I understand that it gets it out faster and people need help, but you're giving rich people money they don't need. What are you talking about? You hate that. You hate giving rich people money, don't you? Yes, I do. But here's the brilliant thing about that plan, okay? If you give somebody who doesn't need it the money, later on you can go back and you can tax them for it. You can just increase taxes. Or do like a clawback. That's all you have to do. Clawback later when we're not in an emergency. That's the power that you're able to do in the government. Okay, if they're wealthy and they get a stimulus check, who cares? Just tax them. That's what you can do, but they hate that, right? Or maybe if you're wealthy and you get like a $2,000 stimulus check or whatever, and you decide, well, I don't need this. I'm going to give this to charity. Why not just give them a tax deduction? I don't know. You can figure something out, okay? You're smart people. It's supposed to be smart people, all right? Yes, they got to repay it in taxes. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. But look, overall, Jim Justice is correct. He is right in the fact that we should absolutely go big, generally. And he knows this, right? Especially in places like West Virginia. As I said before, West Virginia is an interesting place. West Virginia, I've read some of the history of, coal miner strikes in West Virginia, in labor power. And it's really sad that they don't have that kind of labor power now, because it's necessary. It is 100% needed to have that kind of, just labor, these unions and getting together and being able to fight, sometimes physically, for wages and benefits and things like that. And so it has a fascinating pro-labor history, and yet has been turned into, a Republican stronghold with people like Jim Justice and Joe Manchin. It's crazy. But also, it does show you how somebody like a progressive, a grassroots progressive, could potentially make inroads there as well. So, anyway, families in West Virginia are struggling. And so Jim Justice knows this. Jim Justice, by the way, he used to be a Democrat. He switched over to the Republican Party to suck up to Donald Trump, and because he likes coal. But nonetheless, he knows this. He knows that yes, he's not ideologically bound against doing stimulative measures, unlike people like Mitch McConnell. So that is interesting. And speaking of Joe Manchin, by the way, this puts pressure on him to go and pass through budget reconciliation Joe Biden's package. And so there's that. Now the other thing, speaking of Biden, right? So why haven't the stimulus checks gone out? I mean, immediately Biden's like, we're going to help you. We're going to get those $2,000 checks out the door. I mean, $1,400 checks out the door. But we're going to do it as soon as possible, man. We're going to do it soon. Well, now we're not hearing. I'm sorry. I'm reading and I'm seeing from different sources that we're not going to have it till like March or April. So it's not read out the door, and it's not $2,000. So what's going on? It's because Biden is focusing on trying to build a bipartisan bill. And that's what this is. This is what's happening, okay? It is really bad here. Justice ran as a Dem in 2016 and went Republican after being elected. Yes, I remember doing that story. I do remember doing that story. And it's exactly what he did. And again, right? Biden keeps wanting to set up a bipartisan package with the Republicans, which of course you're not going to be able to do, right? Unless you really compromise, and that's what we're afraid of, compromise the effectiveness of the bill, of the stimulus package. Now remember, I've already said, and experts have said, economists, this is not enough. $1.9 trillion is not enough aid. It is too targeted. What we need is a broader, more expensive stimulus measure. This is $1.9 trillion. Not enough to jumpstart an economy that has been affected so much by COVID-19. And yet he's saying, well, I want to compromise with Republicans. Why? You have Bernie Sanders, who is the budget committee chairman. He is ready. The Democrats are ready to go and pass a budget reconciliation bill that immediately gets these checks out the door and gets aid to the American people. Why would you waste your time dicking around with Republicans who don't want to pass anything, who have a vested interest in you and your administration failing? I know he ran as the guy that like unity and building bridges. You can't build bridges with these people, okay? And so, I mean, again, I don't agree with his approach. I mean, there are a few, by the way, Republicans that are not calling for tiny checks. Again, that's Jim Justice there, and then some who are, ideologically linked with Donald Trump, who Donald Trump called for $2,000 checks, and the reason is because it's a political winner. Over 80% of the country is in favor of direct checks. It's popular, and yet Republicans, they want to nickel and dime you even further than it already has been. And I'm going to keep saying, don't do it. Budget reconciliation, let's do it.